I'm joined today by Suzette Magana, a dear friend. We've known each other now for many years, especially I think it was maybe Don Diva who introduced us together.
He's the
And
connector of all people.
yes, and Suzette is one of the first people that I wanted to um, come to speak about our resource because this is in answer to a question that was submitted by a pastor. The pastor wanted to know if there were any good books or good podcasts that I can recommend that could help pastors um, counsel better.
Mm.
And I was thinking, well, my friend Suzette has been hosting a podcast called The Desire Line. And in what was it, season one or season two, with when you were co-hosting with Brandon?
Yeah,
Correct?
we did three
Oh,
seasons
three. Oh my goodness.
together. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 seasons
Mhm.
worth of co-hosting with a pastor down in Long Beach. And I just thought that the conversations that you and he had were fascinating because he was coming at it from a pastor's point of view, and you're coming at it from a therapist's point of view, but both of you are lovers of Christ and both of you love theology. And so I just felt that the subject matter of what you guys talked about would be so helpful for pastors to listen to. Um, and, you know, I think just my own background as a pastor, and if I had learned, if I had heard your podcast while I was pastoring, I think I would have approached counseling differently.
Hmm.
But I I came at it from such an ISTJ approach. Everything was just so black and white. Um, I came from a very puritanical, um, sinners in the hands and an angry God sort of mentality. And I think when I counseled people, it was just do this, thou shalt do this, or thou shalt payeth the price. That kind of thing. I think I scared many people away. I'm like, looking back, I'm thinking, oh man, if only I had done it differently. And I wonder if some of the pastors who are listening or watching this video may be coming from the same cloth. So I just felt like your podcast would be such a great resource for them to listen to. And who better to talk about the podcast than the host herself, right? Um, so Suzette, could you talk a little bit about the Desire Line, maybe even just like why you started it and what some ideas that you have as to why it could be a good resource for pastors to listen to?
Sure. I'm so happy to be here with you, friend. Um, I, yeah, and I'm honored to be asked. So we started the Desire Line in October of 2017. And one thing that I wanted to do, I know how intimate our therapy space feels, right? Like
Yes.
as therapists, we sit with people and we expect them within the confines of an hour and for this much money to
Mhm.
talk to us about their deepest fears and their needs and their trauma and their real thoughts about everything. And so I thought it would be really interesting. And I'm a theology nerd in a novice way. So like I love to study theology
Mhm.
through podcasting. Like
Mhm.
I would listen to guys like NT Wright and different speakers talk about things of the kingdom. And I
Yes.
changed my thinking about Jesus and about who he is and who he could be in my life, even though I grew up
Mhm.
as a Christian, um, through podcasting. So what a great resource. And it's free. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, so I really wanted to team up with, the more I got into like spiritual formation work, the more I
Right.
wanted to team up with a pastor I live in Long Beach, California. So team up with a pastor in Long Beach and have conversations about all things that we could think of around mental health and theology. And I ended up through some recommendations, actually through our colleague Don Diva, who's the connector of all people. he recommended his own pastor, Brandon Cook. And Brandon he's kind of he's a novice lover of psychology, as I am
Mm,
a novice lover of theology.
I
So
love
that
that.
was a fun conversation. Those were fun conversations
Exactly.
because things that we're curious about that we have no training in, like that's once you're in your profession, you get curious about other things, right? So like that's one of those
That's where
things.
the best questions develop, I guess.
Yeah. So that was something that was really of the Lord, that had little to do with my planning on my part.
Mm.
But and so that's what many of our conversations were. Him or I would take the main topic, and then the other person, and we would do kind of a series of this conversation. Like for an example, the very beginning of our first season talked about therapy and trauma and
Mm.
anger and anxiety and peace, and we tried to frame things from both the mental health trained perspective and how the Bible would describe something, right? So
Interesting.
like
Mhm.
um and they were kind of freewheeling conversations with a lot of silliness and a little bit of singing, but like we tried to develop this content of like, okay, so this is what I'm trained in from school,
Yes.
anger as an
Right.
example. But as a therapist, I know this about anger. But as a Christian, I feel this about anger.
Oh, I love that.
Pastor, how do you feel about anger? And what do you teach people about it? Right. And anger, what a
Perfect.
great way to look at mental health and the church, and how we as therapists work on anger with our clients, but also how do pastors work on anger? How do they teach about it from
Yes.
the stage? And how do they sit with people and counsel about
Yes.
anger?
How do they work on it for themselves?
Holy cow. In their own relationships with their own
I
kids. Right?
know.
Yeah. So that, I think anger is it's one of my, and Roy and I are colleagued up because Roy's a sex addiction specialist and I work with people that have gone through betrayal.
Mhm.
How do I help good little Christian ladies
Oh,
deal with the anger that's coming up when they discover their spouse's affair? How do I teach men who have been betrayed that the anger is okay when men of all cultures and all backgrounds are trained out of appropriate anger,
yep.
without
Yep.
acting out on it?
Yep.
So anyway, so I can talk about that for an hour if you want.
Oh,
Um,
man.
but so that kind of topic is one that we've focused on. And then Brandon got to shift us into theology conversations and talking about the gospels. And I don't know how structured it feels when you
Uh-huh.
when you're listening to the Desire Line, but for us we tried to provide some structure and some guidelines, but then we really just wanted to nerd out on certain things, I think. And who knows how many tangents happened, but all
Yes.
I know is that we couldn't do less than an hour of a conversation, no matter how long we tried.
And I know that you had I don't know, at least several, I think in my memory, several episodes about Enneagram.
Yep, we did Enneagram.
Yeah.
Yep, we
And I
tried to do.
think that that also will be helpful. I mean, I know that there are many pastors who are fans of the Enneagram and what that looks like when they are in contact with a person at their church and wondering, oh, I wonder what number they are, and what's their wing and what are their, like, who am I? How am I interacting with them because of our different Enneagram types and things like that? So, yeah.
And think of therapists are trained in what we call countertransference, which is like,
Yes.
how does this person in front of me trigger my stuff? How does
Absolutely.
this dude trigger my relationship with my dad or my sister, or
Yes.
um, and I think that that's a really important thing when we're talking about Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder, whatever personality conversation we're having. That
Yes.
framework helps us to take a look and see how people affect us.
Yes.
And we are more effective if we know how that person's going to bring up stuff inside of
Yeah.
us and then not act out on it, you know? So not like I remind people of their big sister. That's like a common thing I've heard my whole life because I'm bossy, I think, and authoritative, as
Yes.
a female. And so how can people get triggered by me as a big sister-ish kind of person?
Right.
But also if they remind me of someone, how does that, like, I might just react at them,
Mhm.
because I'm still mad at my dad, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Countertransference is a big one.